Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News on the South Florida Conservative News Service. It is Friday, March 13th, 4:33 p.m. And it's the end of the week. Congress on the Democrat side has done as much as it can to leak what they would consider vital information about the Iranian war to try to stymie the Trump administration in any of its escalating issues. Basically, I have never seen, what can I say that? I have never seen an opposing political party more interested in killing American service people and destroying allied countryside and property as the Democrat Party is doing this week. Also, everything that has gotten up to by freezing the pays of various law enforcement and Homeland Security. So basically, once again, terrorists have a field day in the United States right now because of the Democratic Party and their need to fix the next election. But we're going to talk about a specific issue. I'll give a shout out to Senator Blumenthal, that piece of shit who came out of the military briefing, said basically the United States is going to invade Khark Island. And that allowed the media then to say Delta Force is going to invade Khark Island because the media earlier in the week had said the Iranians had mined the Strait of Hormuz, which, as far as I can tell, probably didn't happen. And if it did, it was like 3 or 4 mines before every other ship went to the bottom of the ocean. We can talk about the ships that have been hit at anchor and how the media is helping Iran do its bomb damage assessments. There is a lot of things that the US and Western media is doing at this moment that is, I would consider them a hostile, they're right in there with Iran. But let's talk about Khark Island before everybody has a fantasy festival about it. Okay. The target now that the Democrats are pushing for, and the thing is, this could happen either Iran would do something or we would do something about this, or it can be left alone. So we are talking about this target in the Iran conflict that looks like it's a perfectly reasonable military objective, but may actually be one of the most dangerous pieces of infrastructure in the entirety of the Middle East. And that is our famous Kharg Island, of which we were discussing, Iran's main oil export terminal into the Persian Gulf. Some commentators have floated the idea, after Senator Blumenthal wouldn't shut the fuck up, of sending commandos. You know, the Delta Force did so well in Venezuela. Let's have them do it again. They could seize this facility and we can shut down Iran's oil exports. And on paper, it sounds very simple. It's not a lot of land. Land forces are small on the island. Secure the terminal, choke off Iran's economic lifeline. Great. But when you examine that situation, Kharg Island, and all you gamers out there know for 30 years, somebody mentioned Kharg Island has been on every war game out there, right? Kharg Island turns out to be a classic example of what strategists would call a double-edged sword. And I'm going to tell you why, because everybody else thinks it's going to be pretty ninja to jump off onto this island. And why does it look like a perfect target? Well, Khark Island handles the overwhelming majority of Iran's oil exports. The tankers load there before heading out through the Gulf, or I mean through the Strait of Hormuz, into global markets. In strategic terms, that concentration creates what the military planners, if there are any anymore, call a center of gravity. Instead of trying to strike hundreds of dispersed targets across large country, you have a single location through which most of the economic value flows. That's why some analysts immediately ask a simple question. If Kharg Island is the choke point, why not just take it? The island itself is pretty small. Look at it on the map. It's isolated, it's offshore, and that combination naturally invites the comparison uh, to other special operations missions that were done in modern military history. And that's pretty much where the simplicity ends. This is not attacking Crete for those of you who attacked Crete. From a purely tactical perspective, seizing a small offshore facility is not the most difficult military operational imaginable. If air and naval superiority already exists, which it does, landing forces on a small island is technically feasible. But seizing a target and holding it are two very different things. The moment a foreign force lands on Kharg, it becomes a fixed target in the middle of the Persian Gulf, which means whatever missiles and artillery and everything else that the Iranians have left, they can heap it up on the island on top of everybody. Iran would have every incentive to attack it using the missiles and drones and naval forces and whatever else they have. In other words, the operation would immediately turn into a race between the occupying force who is trying to protect the facility, believe it or not, and Iran, which would be trying to destroy it. Because if we were to drop the troops on it, it's to capture it intact, render it inoperable for now, and then when the Iranians surrender, turn on the water again. The Iranians, on the other hand, who are playing a zero-sum game, would say it's better for us to just burn this whole place down than leave it for the foreign devils. And that's what's leading to this core paradox on the island. The entire value of Kharg Island lies in its oil infrastructure. So if the island gets destroyed, the facility loses its value. If it's captured intact, as I said, it must be protected. And that is a strategic contradiction. And that will suck in more men and more supplies and more men and more supplies. A force that captures that island cannot easily damage the infrastructure it came to control, unless that was the plan to go in there and nuke it into the Stone Age. And we'll tell you why that is not the plan, because we could have done it from the air. But Iran faces the loss of its major export hub. It has very few incentives to keep that thing going, because then the government knows the jig is up. If Tehran believes a facility is going to be lost, it could calculate that destroying the facility on Kharg is preferable to allowing an adversary to control it, because that means you're just allowing the next guys are going to take your job to go out and buy Rolls Royces, right? And once oil infrastructure becomes a battlefield target, the consequences are going to go far beyond Iran. And this is what we're talking about when it comes to global energy positions and problems. Khark Island is not just an Iranian asset, it is part of the global energy system. Millions of barrels of oil move through that terminal each day. If the facility were damaged or destroyed, global oil markets would react immediately. Prices could spike dramatically, affecting economies around the world, right? A global energy crisis would occur. So even a successful military seizure could produce a strategic outcome that harms the very countries conducting the operation. This is why some planners view Kharg as less of a prize and more of a trap. I would say truly it is going to go in that direction if we were to go, which is why I did not care for Blumenthal opening his fucking mouth talking like that, because was he trying to, scare the Iranians into blowing the thing up first? Because he doesn't care. His team wins. The Democratic Party were able to achieve something like that through no fault of their own, because they'd say, hey, I didn't make them do it. I was just expressing my concern about Trump's overreaching military when they blew the fucking thing up. They will effectively wreck everything that Trump's administration is doing, any of the reformative things that they're trying to do in Europe or in Japan or anything like that. The dark ages will descend. You may think not, but I would tell you that that is very, very true. If the oil facilities in neighboring states, the tanker traffic, maritime shipping routes, that means they could all become targets. That means the gloves come off. They're going to burn it all down. At that point, the conflict would shift from regional military confrontation to a broader energy war. And energy wars have a way of drawing in far more actors than anyone initially planned. All these factors help explain why Khark Island, despite such an obvious economic target, has remained largely untouched during the conflict. You don't hear about bombing missions being done there. The island sits at the intersection of three competing considerations: military opportunity, economic risk, and geopolitical escalation. Destroying it would cripple Iran's exports, Capturing it would create enormous protection challenges, and damaging it would destabilize or could destabilize global energy markets. Destroying it definitely will. Damaging it, yes, will also probably throw it into a tailspin. In other words, Khark Island represents a rare kind of a target as far as planning would go, one that is strategically valuable because nobody wants to be the one who pulls the trigger on it. It sort of blends into Iran's whole defensive um, doctrine, which was just so you couldn't invade it. That's pretty much how Iran's been operating. If you'd seen our doctrinal talks on why they have all the missile setups the way they do, they are designed not to be invaded. They aren't designed to not get the shit kicked out of them. They're designed to not be able to be invaded because they know their fanatical regime can be beaten if you invade them and kill them all, meaning the IRGC and stuff like that. If you do not do that, they think they can outlast it. But same thing with this island. Okay. So when you hear suggestions about sending the Delta Force or commandos or whoever it is to seize Khark Island, it's worth remembering that the warfare is really just about what is possible on is I'm sorry, rarely about what is possible on the battlefield. There's a lot of things we could do. We could be super ninja out there and do a lot of shit. But just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. And sometimes the most dangerous targets that we're talking about are the ones that look the easiest. And Khark Island may be the perfect example of that. A small island in the Persian Gulf, right? Whose fate could influence not just that war that we're involved in, but the entire global energy system. So thank you for listening. If there are any questions or comments, like and subscribe. What else didn't I say? We're on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Substack, and www.southfloridaconservative.com. And thank you for listening. Have a good weekend. Goodbye.